Evening, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'll be talking about the conservation of the short-tailed albatross, a rare and endangered seabird that migrates to Alaska. Can be viewed through the lens of the three guiding ethical principles of conservation biology: documenting biodiversity, investigating human impacts on ecosystems, and developing practical approaches to prevent extinctions. Firstly, documenting the full range of biodiversity applies to the short-tailed albatross, as it involves recognizing the species and its role within the ecosystem. This principle has been evidenced by successful efforts to study foraging habitats and predict hotspots crucial for survival. Secondly, investigating human impacts is critical, as seen in the study of bycatch in the Alaskan trawl fishery and its impacts on the short-tailed albatross population. Understanding these impacts is essential to devise the strategies that minimize negative interactions, such as bycatch, and support the species conservation. Lastly, translocation and hand rearing efforts demonstrate the development of practical approaches, which are not just early indicators but also tangible successes for the species conservation and island restoration. These efforts also reflect the normative discipline of conservation biology, where the value of the short-tailed albatross is recognized, and information gathered from the first two principles is used to guide conservation efforts. Among the three guiding ethical principles of conservation biology, the one that resonates the most with conservation of the short-tailed albatross is the development of practical approaches to prevent extinction. This principle is particularly pertinent as it involves active intervention and management strategies to address the species' immediate threats, such as bycatch in fisheries and the need for habitat restoration. Interdisciplinary elements are essential to the conservation biology of the short-tailed albatross. This includes collaboration among conservation biologists, fisheries experts, and policymakers to address bycatch issues and habitat management. For example, the translocation projects necessitate animal husbandry, veterinary medicine, and ecological monitoring expertise. Additionally, understanding the environmental and geomorphological factors affecting the species requires an input from various scientific disciplines, including biology, ecology, and oceanography. An array of interactions between various marine organisms characterizes the food web surrounding the short-tailed albatross in Alaska. Due to its predatory nature, the albatross occupies a higher trophic level. The albatross primarily feeds on fish and cephalopods, which consume smaller fish, zooplankton, and phytoplankton. At the base of the food web, phytoplankton capture sunlight and convert it into energy through photosynthesis, serving as the primary producers. Zooplankton, which includes small crustaceans like krill, feed on phytoplankton and constitute the next trophic level as primary consumers. Small fish that feed on zooplankton represent secondary consumers. Larger predatory fish, the prey of the short-tailed albatross, consume these smaller fish and are considered tertiary consumers. The Alaskan short-tailed albatross, a predator that feeds on these larger fish, is placed near the apex of the food web. Depending on availability and the regional food web dynamics, its diet includes carrion, squid, and other marine organisms. The health of the food web is critical to the albatross as changes in the availability of prey due to overfishing, climate change, or other ecological disruptions can impact its survival. As such, the albatross is an indicator species for the health of the marine ecosystem in the North Pacific, particularly around Alaska. The range of the short-tailed albatross is likely to exhibit high biodiversity due to several factors. The species extends its marine range from Siberia south to the China coast, into the Bering Sea and the Gulf of Alaska, south to Baja California, and through the North Pacific. This expansive range covers a variety of climatic zones, from temperate to subarctic regions, which are known to support a diverse array of marine life. The North Pacific region, particularly around the Gulf of Alaska, is characterized by a rich marine ecosystem influenced by geologic features such as the continental shelf and oceanic currents like the Alaska Current, which bring nutrient-rich waters to the surface, otherwise known as upwelling. This upwelling supports the high primary productivity, leading to abundant phytoplankton as the foundation for a diverse food web. The biological features of the area associated with the short-tailed albatross also contribute to high biodiversity. The albatross's diet includes a wide variety of fish and cephalopods, including a complex food web with many species occupying various trophic levels. Additionally, the albatross's breeding habitat on remote islands support unique communities of organisms that are adapted to these specific environments. Climate change may affect the region's biodiversity by altering vegetation, oceanic conditions, and prey availability for marine birds like the short-tailed albatross. However, the general diversity of the area is considered high due to the combination of geologic, climatic, and biological features that can create a dynamic and productive marine ecosystem supporting a wide range of species. The short-tailed albatross plays an essential role in maintaining the balance of marine biodiversity through its predatory habits, which regulate the population of different species. This helps to support sustainable fisheries and the resilience of the marine ecosystem. However, the albatross is threatened by pollution and habitat disturbance, which risks these ecosystem services. Additionally, the bird contributes to cultural services such as ecotourism, providing economic and recreational benefits. Implementing conservation efforts to safeguard various ecosystem services influenced by this species is crucial. The three main categories of ecosystem services are provisioning services, such as food and water, regulating services, such as climate regulation and disease control, and cultural services, such as recreational, spiritual, and educational benefits. The short-tailed albatross plays a vital role in regulating marine ecosystems by keeping fish populations in check. This helps maintain the balance of these ecosystems, which has downstream effects on commercial fisheries. The bird's migratory and foraging behaviors are also significant as they contribute to the functioning of these ecosystems, which affects nutrient distribution and marine habitat health. The short-tailed albatross is also sought by bird watchers, providing recreational and educational value. To the people and bringing economic benefits to ecotourism communities. The species' contribution to the ecosystem services highlights the importance of conservation efforts to protect such species and their services in maintaining biodiversity and human well-being. Use values are categorized as direct use values, which arise from direct interaction with a resource, like harvesting or viewing wildlife, or indirect use values, which are benefits derived from the ecosystem functions that support the resource, like pollination or climate regulation. The short-tailed albatross provides direct use values in the form of cultural services, such as ecotourism, where individuals derive value from observing the species in its natural habitat. This can have educational and recreational benefits and generate economic value through tourism. Indirect use values associated with the short-tailed albatross comes from its role in ecosystem regulation, such as maintaining balanced fish populations, which supports commercial fisheries and the marine food web. This regulatory function indirectly benefits human societies by sustaining fish stocks essential for food security and economic stability. An ethical argument for the conservation of the short-tailed albatross is based on the idea that biodiversity has intrinsic values and that humans have a moral responsibility to act as stewards of the earth. The concept of intrinsic value implies that the short-tailed albatross has a right to exist regardless of its usefulness to humans. From a biocentric perspective, all species are important ecosystem components, contributing to their complexity and resilience, and therefore should be protected for their own sake. The ethical principle of intergenerational equity also suggests preserving the natural world for future generations. If the short-tailed albatross were to become extinct, we would be depriving future generations of the opportunity to learn from and experience this species, diminishing the richness of the natural heritage we pass on to them. Climate change has complex effects on the short-tailed albatross due to its changes in sea surface temperature, particularly in late winter. These changes can influence the entire marine ecosystem, potentially leading to modifications in food webs that affect the availability of prey for the albatross. As the ocean warms, the stratification of water layers can become more pronounced, which means that nutrient-rich cooler waters do not mix well with the warmer surface water, leading to less food like fish and squid for the albatrosses. This forces the birds to expend more time and energy searching for food, which could affect their overall health and breeding success. Another aspect to consider is the impact of climate change on the breeding sites of the short-tailed albatross. Climate change may affect these sites' vegetation and other characteristics, potentially leading to habitat loss or alteration, which could profoundly affect the bird's ability to raise their young successfully. Overexploitation through bycatch is another significant threat to the short-tailed albatross, a species already grappling with a history of near extinction due to commercial hunting in the early 20th century. Bycatch occurs when these birds, attracted by the bait, get caught in hooks or nets used in fisheries. The study by Zador et al. 2008 specifically looked at the effects of bycatch in the Alaskan trawl fishery. This research is crucial because it underscores the direct impact of fishing practices on the short-tailed albatross population, which is still trying to recover to a stable and sustainable level. Since 1983, 21 instances of bycatch involving short-tailed albatrosses have been recorded. In the grand scheme of things, this number is not as bad as it could be, but it would be much more ideal to have that number be zero. Further research into gear configurations that minimize bycatch and the expansion of habitat protection efforts could help enhance the survival prospects of the short-tailed albatross. Additionally, international cooperation is crucial as the birds migrate across different national jurisdictions and international waters, necessitating a coordinated approach to their conservation. Bycatch can cause immediate death of individual birds and has long-lasting implications for the species' survival. Even a single unintentional catch of a short-tailed albatross can result in a loss of breeding potential and hinder the population growth rate. This is particularly concerning for a species with low reproductive rates, like the short-tailed albatross, as removing even a few individuals can significantly impact the population's growth and recovery. Furthermore, bycatch can also affect genetic diversity of the population, which can have severe consequences for the species' resilience to environmental changes or diseases. Given the severity of these threats, measures to reduce bycatch are critical. Conservationists and fisheries have been working to develop and implement mitigation strategies such as bird scaring lines, seasonal closures, and modified fishing gear designed to minimize albatross fatalities. Moreover, plastic pollution is a significant threat to the albatrosses, as they may ingest plastic pieces, mistaking them for food, which can cause injury, malnutrition, or even death. Despite the low numbers of the short-tailed albatross, conservation measures have led to a steady population increase. These efforts include habitat restoration, monitoring of breeding sites, and measures to reduce bycatch in fishing operations. However, the species' small population size and the concentration of breeding individuals in a few locations continues to raise concern for its long-term viability, thus necessitating ongoing conservation actions. Short-tailed albatross breeding on a limited number of islands are vulnerable to catastrophic events like volcanic eruptions, which impact their population persistence. Historically, overhunting brought them close to extinction, with their recovery still leaving the population relatively small. Their specialized foraging habits and habitat requirements render them sensitive to environmental changes. Short-tailed albatrosses have been identified not as coastal, but rather reliant on predictable hotspots within the North Pacific, indicating relatively narrow habitat preferences that changes in ocean conditions could disrupt. At the same time, their low tolerance for disturbance, especially during breeding seasons on nesting islands, mirrors that of many seabird species. Such disturbances can harm reproductive success and chick survival. The ongoing survival risks include fisheries bycatch, changes in ocean currents, and fish migration patterns as a result. Despite fishery-related mortality currently appearing to be a low risk, it contributes to the cumulative pressure on this endangered population. Sea level rise is also an ongoing survival risk due to their use of small island breeding habitats. The bird's conservation program must be optimized through ongoing study. A well-conducted study to gather new data on the short-tailed albatross should evaluate the species' breeding success on Torishima Island, which is a crucial breeding ground, as I said, for at least 3 consecutive breeding seasons. The study should examine the correlation between nest site features, parental investment, and chick survival rates to better understand the factors contributing to successful reproduction. The selection of nests should be done through stratified random sampling from different areas to ensure the representation of various types of habitat. Detailed data on egg laying dates, hatching success, chick growth rates, fledgling success, and instances of nest failure should be recorded by researchers. Additionally, they should observe and document parents' behavior, foraging trips, durations, and prey delivery rates. GPS trackers should also be attached to a subset of breeding adults to analyze foraging patterns and their relationship with chick survival. Environmental variables such as temperature, humidity, and local food availability should also be recorded to assess their impact on reproductive outcomes. The species approach to conservation, which is focusing on protecting specific species, which safeguards the broader ecosystem in which they inhabit, is particularly pertinent for the short-tailed albatross due to the bird's vulnerability and particular threats such as bycatch and limited breeding sites. This approach can ensure that conservation efforts are directly focused on the survival of this species, which, due to its ecological role, may also benefit other species within its habitat. The species approach aligns well with the distinctiveness, utility, and endangerment criteria, providing a clear justification for prioritizing conservation actions for the short-tailed albatross. While the ecosystem approach can complement species-specific actions by preserving the albatross's habitat, the species approach can provide targeted and immediate benefits for the species recovery. Torishima Island is designated as a National Wildlife Protection Area, a National Natural Monument, and a National Natural Treasure in Japan, indicating a high level of protection. These designations provide legal protections and restrictions on human activities to conserve the albatross's breeding habitat. The short-tailed albatross is also protected by several U.S. national and international laws. In the U.S., it is listed as endangered under the United States Endangered Species Act, which provides legal protection against harm and encourages conservation actions by state agencies. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act also protects it. Internationally, the short-tailed albatross is protected under the Albatross and Petrel Conservation Act, part of a multilateral agreement aiming to maintain favorable conservation status for albatrosses and petrels. The effectiveness of these laws in protecting the short-tailed albatross has been recognized, as they have contributed to the reduction in accidental bycatch of these birds in fishing operations. Regulations such as requiring larger fishing vessels to use bird-scaring streamer lines have significantly reduced accidental bycatch and have been considered successful conservation efforts. The short-tailed albatross is currently listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. This status indicates that the species faces a high wild extinction risk. The population has been increasing due to conservation efforts, but it remains small with few breeding sites, making it vulnerable to sudden changes or threats. The key factors contributing to its vulnerable status include the limited number of breeding locations susceptible to natural disasters and threats such as bycatch and fisheries. Despite the high level of protection, challenges remain. The main breeding area at Tsubame Saki is on a sparsely vegetated, erodible slope which has impacted breeding success. Researchers have implemented Operation Decoy to attract albatrosses to breed at a more stable location called Hatsune Sake to address this. While this initiative has been successful with 148 breeding pairs in 2013, it highlights the need for ongoing conservation efforts to ensure the population's long-term viability. Improvements could be made in several areas. First, efforts to mitigate the impacts of climate change on the albatross population, such as rising sea levels and changes in ocean currents, should be prioritized. Second, further research on the albatross's habitat needs and population dynamics could inform more effective conservation strategies. Lastly, while some measures have been put in place to reduce the accidental catching of albatrosses in fishing activities, more stringent regulations and better enforcement are necessary to ensure their complete protection from bycatch. This is also vital to ensure the connectivity of habitats across the species range to support migration and movement patterns, which could benefit conservation efforts. Torishima Island's current management approach seems to lack an integrated plan for ecosystem management. It's unclear how biodiversity is monitored or managed, and using science to inform management decisions doesn't seem to be a central part of the approach. So while some conservation efforts are underway, a more integrated, science-based, and collaborative approach is needed to ensure the long-term health and sustainability of the island's ecosystems. This is another area for potential improvements. Several programs are focused on conserving the short-tailed albatross. For example, the Japanese government has a program to eradicate non-native species like feral cats and Norwegian rats introduced to Torishima Island by former human residents. This effort is crucial because Torishima Island is a key breeding site for the short-tailed albatross. The Japanese government provides funding for the direct protection of breeding grounds on Torishima Island due to the island's designation as a special natural treasure under the law for protection of cultural properties. Torishima Island, which serves as the main breeding area for the short-tailed albatross, is also designated as a natural treasure or natural conservation area. Furthermore, funding is provided to protect the birds in areas controlled by Japan outside of Torishima Island because the short-tailed albatross has been designated as an endangered species of wild fauna under the law of the Conservation of Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. ABC's Seabird program conserves short-tailed albatross and other seabirds outside of Japan. Their efforts include a combination of direct action, outreach, and policy work. The Fish and Wildlife Service has also been involved in various conservation efforts for the short-tailed albatross, including habitat protection and fisheries management. The NMFS has researched bycatch and developed recommendations to reduce the incidental capture of albatrosses in fisheries. Additionally, organizations and governments, both nationally and internationally, likely contribute funding to the short-tailed albatross conservation. Although some conservation efforts are already in place, additional funding is still needed for more research to better understand the species' biology, threats, and effective conservation strategies. Furthermore, funding for community-based conservation initiatives and public education can help garner local support and increase awareness. With climate change posing a significant threat, funding for initiatives to help the albatross adapt to changing conditions is crucial. In conclusion, the short-tailed albatross's continued existence is precarious, hinged on the careful management of their direct threats and the conservation of their specialized ecological niches. The relatively slow reproduction rates also hamper restoration efforts. Lower reproductive rates and longer maturation times can significantly slow a species' recovery. This happens because fewer offspring are produced, and it takes longer for those offspring to contribute to the population. The short-tailed albatross takes 9 years to reach breeding maturity, so the population recovery will be slow. Conservation of the short-tailed albatross faces several major challenges, including significant bycatch in fisheries, habitat loss, and degradation due to human activities. The potential for cryptic species to complicate conservation efforts, and the impacts of climate change on their distribution and survival. Bycatch in fisheries, such as the Alaskan trawl fishery, has been shown to significantly reduce short-tailed albatross populations through incidental capture in fishing nets. Habitat loss and degradation driven by human activities like mining, logging, and coastal development threaten the species' nesting and foraging sites. Recent research has revealed the short-tailed albatross may consist of 2 distinct species, making it a cryptic species requiring investigation and potentially further complicating conservation strategies. Climate change-induced variations in ocean temperatures and currents disrupt the albatross's foraging and breeding patterns, making it difficult for them to find food and reproduce successfully. Adaptive management strategies and climate change refuges are being developed to help albatrosses cope with these environmental shifts. Potential solutions to these challenges include reducing bycatch through fisheries modifications, protecting and restoring habitats through sustainable practices in marine protected areas, conducting genetic research to confirm cryptic species, which I didn't mention before, but cryptic species just means that species that was previously thought to be a single species is found out to actually be two separate species with very similar or almost indistinguishable morphology. So that's that. But anyway, conducting genetic research to confirm cryptic species and develop species-specific strategies, and implementing climate change and adaptation plans. Translocation and hand-rearing programs have shown early success, with nestlings demonstrating normal growth and development when raised under controlled conditions. Population increases have been observed following implementing bycatch reduction measures in fisheries. Successful island restoration efforts through translocation of albatrosses have benefited both the species and local ecosystems. Thank you.